welcome Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici to a Zoom interview about the first 100 days of Congress for the Washington County Democrats. I'm Carl Fisher. I am the vice chair of the 1st Congressional District Democrats here in the 1st CD, and I am home in my base of Tigard, Oregon.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you, albeit virtually.
I think this is going to be fun.
I do too. I'm looking forward to it.
Congress has been back full throttle since Joe Biden was inaugurated, and even a little bit before that. How have the first 100 days gone for you?
They have been great. This is my first time serving in the majority with the Democratic president, because when I was elected to Congress, we had President Obama, but I was in the minority. And then after the 2018 election, we had the majority in the House, but we had you-know-who. And so now this is an amazing opportunity with the Democrats in the majority in the House and the Senate, and with the Biden-Harris administration. So we have been very busy listening to the people we represent across the country and passing legislation, a lot of it already in the first 100 days to meet the needs of the people we represent, to meet the needs of workers and individuals and families and small businesses, and regrow our economy and get people vaccinated. And there's just a lot going on, and a lot more that we're working on that we will be passing soon. So elections matter. And this is an administration that is so refreshing to have people who believe in science and who believe in climate change and who understand the importance of working families and their needs and vaccinations. And it's just been a great opportunity, and I look forward to the work coming up as well.
I mean, it certainly has been a breath of fresh air, looking at what's been going on in Congress.
Indeed. What a relief, finally, to get rid of Donald Trump and to have an administration that really shares our values and makes a big difference. So thank you, Washington County Democrats, and everybody who helped get the majorities in the House and Senate and elect the Biden-Harris team. I do want to note that I think it kind of got overshadowed that on January 5th, both Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff were elected, and then the next day was January 6th. And so it really didn't get the attention and the celebration that it deserved to see those two Georgia senators, a Black senator and a Jewish senator elected in Georgia, both Democrats, and to flip the control of the Senate and who's holding the gavel. So what a difference it made.
So what have been like some of the legislative accomplishments that the Democratic Congress can sort of, wave and say, hey, this is what we were able to accomplish in the first 100 days?
Right. Well, the American Rescue Plan, a huge accomplishment in terms of the relief bill, vaccines in arms, money in pockets, kids in schools, people back in jobs. So that relief bill, which a large part of it went through the Education and Labor Committee, in which I'm a leader and a subcommittee chair, really is making a difference in terms of getting families through these really tough times, getting schools open, getting schools the resources they need, both for our K-12 schools and our colleges and universities, and then childcare, funding for childcare, another economic payment into people's pockets. I have always advocated for monthly payments during the pandemic, but this was another support for people and families. A lot of Oregonians got that extra payment. So I'm really excited about that piece of legislation. It was a big bill. One of the provisions that I care about a lot and worked on is the child tax credit that is projected to be able to lift half of children out of poverty who are cut child poverty in half. That's a tremendous accomplishment. We need to really focus on making it permanent, because in the American Rescue Plan, it was for a set period of time. But I think people are going to see what a difference this is going to make. I care so much about the youth and children in our communities and in our lives, and the policies we're we're working on are going to affect them a lot longer than they're going to affect me. So lifting millions of children out of poverty is going to be a big difference. But we also passed HR1, the sort of good government voting rights bill to expand voting rights, paper ballots, and more, some more transparency and getting some of the money out of politics, which is a good thing. We passed background checks, universal background checks. We passed the PRO Act, the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, a huge bill, because we know how the middle class was built, and that was through organized labor. And so I was a champion of that bill and supported it and co-sponsored it and helped to get it through the committee and across the floor. So we really know what a difference our friends of labor make and really making life better. So we passed a lot of great bills. Many of them are sitting over on the Senate floor. I'm actually talking to you from Washington, D.C. on the afternoon of the day that we just passed the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, a great bill, actually bipartisan, to help pregnant workers because they're still discriminated against at work when a simple accommodation, which is often like getting an extra break or having a glass of water, being able to sit instead of stand, or weightlifting requirements and things can keep pregnant workers on the job. Wow. And this is something that Oregon passed recently at the state level. But all pregnant workers deserve fairness and to be free from discrimination. So I spoke on that this morning, and it passed this morning. So I'm really excited about that. And then going forward, we're working on the American Jobs Plan, the big infrastructure bill that I'm very, very excited about, because not only are we going to be creating so many good jobs that are going to be in our communities. I got a big investment in workforce in there, and was recently talking with our great new labor Secretary Walsh, about that, and making sure that we have opportunities to get people the skills they need to get some of those good jobs in the transportation and energy sectors. And speaking of energy, as we transition to a clean energy economy, we're going to need workers with those skills. And so this workforce piece is really big and really important. My work on the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis, I'm excited about, as well as the American Families Plan. And that's the plan that I'm so grateful the Biden administration is putting forward to recognize the importance of caregiving, and having strong, healthy families means that we have affordable, accessible child care. And we're supporting our caregivers who are doing such important work. So that's just a few of the things we're going to be working on. There's a lot to get done. We just passed a great consumer protection bill. I have a background in consumer protection, both from when I worked at Legal Aid, and then when I worked in what was called the Credit Practices Division of the Bureau of Consumer Protection at the Federal Trade Commission, which is a really long place where I worked. But I worked on predatory debt collection and enforcing the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And just yesterday, we passed a sort of comprehensive bill that will help protect consumers from predatory debt collection. And I got an amendment in there to help. And so we're just doing so much great work. And we know that housing and the stability of our communities, and raising the minimum wage and all sorts of great things are we want the Senate to be passing these as well. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that there was some bipartisan support on some of these initiatives.
Sure.
Is there still room for bipartisan support on a lot of things left? Or because the media, they focus on, like, you hear about, I think just the last couple of days, like AOC is being stalked by another member of Congress.
Yeah, she is. It's awful. And I spoke with AOC yesterday, on Representative Ocasio-Cortez yesterday, and said, look, we stand with you. Yeah. This is not normal behavior on behalf of, we know who's stalking her, Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not normal behavior. And I wanted her to know that we're all supportive of the efforts to make sure that our workplace is safe. And so, yeah, the things like that do get attention, and they should. And we need to draw attention to the fact that there are some of these Republican members who are not only denying facts, but really making people feel unsafe at work. But yes, of course, there's room for bipartisanship, and especially with the Senate, the way it is right now, I look at my responsibility to get things done on behalf of the Oregonians I represent, on behalf of the American people. And when we need to, we'll pass things with just Democrats, as we did with the American Rescue Plan. But when there's room for bipartisanship, yes, we should do that. And I mentioned the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. That was a bipartisan bill. Mm-hmm. Next week here in DC, we're going to be passing my Bipartisan Coast Research Act, something I've been working on as a member of the Science Committee that's really critical to our coastal communities. I represent the North Coast, and we know that ocean acidification, because of the carbon pollution that's being absorbed in the ocean, is affecting the health of our waters and our tourism and our industries, like our shellfish industry. So my Bipartisan Coast Research Act is going to be up for a vote next week. When things can be bipartisan, let's get them done. If they're not bipartisan, and if making them bipartisan compromises our values, we won't do that. But my job is to get things done on behalf of the American people, and that's what I'm fighting for.
Yeah, it's good to know that in Congress there still exists the mentality that good ideas are not reserved for just one partisan viewpoint. If there's a good idea, members of Congress are going to work to advance it.
Right. And also there's a notion too that some people, and I'm definitely not naming any names here, but some people will only, for example, say, I'm only going to do this bill if my name is on it, or if I'm the original co-sponsor, and that happened to you. I served many years sadly in the minority here, but I didn't get elected to just get things done when I was in the minority. So I tried to find common ground and shape legislation, even if my name wasn't on it. If it was good legislation, I was going to support it. Because that's why I'm here, is to pass legislation that helps the people I represent and that really creates a better future for them.
Other news coming out of DC, Liz Cheney losing her leadership position in the minority party.
Right.
Do you think that's going to be more common in the future? Like, do you think the Trumpist mentality has taken over the Republicans in Congress?
Well, it certainly has taken over many of them, and obviously a majority of the Republicans in the House, because they voted to oust Liz Cheney from her leadership position. Now, I want to make something clear. I do not agree with Liz Cheney on probably most, if not all, of the policies that we voted on. There are probably very little things that we have in common in that. But I do say that she was principled in standing up to Donald Trump. And she was principled when she said that the attack on the Capitol was an insurrection and it was wrong, and Donald Trump had something to do with it, and he shouldn't be anywhere near the White House. I agree with Liz Cheney on that. I don't agree with her on policy. But for that, she lost her position in leadership, which means that majority of the House Republicans obviously don't agree with that. And then just this morning, they replaced her with Representative Elise Stefanik, who does not have the same, well, she has a very Republican voting record, but not as conservative of a record as Liz Cheney, but she is basically very aligned with Donald Trump in terms of supporting him and saying that he's part of the party. And I did catch a few words of her remarks afterward, and she said the Republicans are unified. No, they aren't. They definitely aren't.
I mean, it seems that there's a very clear portion of the Republican Party that believes Trump lost the election fairly, and then there's another part of it that's glossing over that fact. They don't want to acknowledge that Trump lost. Whether or not they actually really believe he won or lost, they're not going to acknowledge that he lost.
Well, it's giving them, it's sort of feeding their desire to pass voter suppression laws. That this lie that the election was stolen or that there was this voter fraud, which, as we know, there was not. There were numerous cases challenging that, and they lost them. So we know that they're not being honest. They're not being factual about what happened in the election. And even just the other day, there were some House Republicans who said things like, well, January 6th, those were tourists. I was here on January 6th. They were not tourists. They were insurrectionists. They were attackers, and they were vicious, and they killed and harmed and maimed many people. So this denial of facts is just unbelievable, and definitely the Republicans are not unified.
Yeah.
But I just want to reiterate how how much elections matter, and how amazing this opportunity is now with Democrats in the majority, in the House, in the Senate, and an administration that shares our values. So what a difference it makes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's, DC is such an interesting place to go. And if you're a visitor, to go and visit the legislative process. And DC has sort of itself become sort of a flexing point in Congress now that they've taken the vote for DC statehood. Can you tell us a little bit what it was like about that?
I strongly support DC statehood. There is no good reason, no legitimate reason to deprive people in Washington, D.C. Of their right to participate in the system, to have a voice in Congress. So I absolutely support DC statehood. And it baffles me that there are people arguing against it. It really disenfranchises people. And of course, a lot of people here are people of color, and probably mostly Democrats. And that's probably why they're objecting. I just want to mention that I hope we get to the time now when people can come back and visit the Capitol. It has been closed to the public because of COVID and then post January 6th. But we really now are seeing, it's mid-May, and we're really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel with COVID, in large part because of the vaccine distribution efforts. We still have some work to do, and have been working on making sure that we can get vaccines to everybody, and I'm hopeful that people will continue to get vaccinated, because we're not going to end COVID unless we really address this getting more people vaccinated, and that includes not just in the United States, but really around the globe.
Yeah. The CDC yesterday released its updated mask guidelines and everything. How I haven't been on a plane since COVID. Clearly you have, because you're in DC.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. How has travel been like in times of COVID? Like, how have you dealt with the changes?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Before I was vaccinated, and I got vaccinated in Washington, D.C., because the physician at the Capitol recommended that we all get vaccinated. So I got vaccinated in January. But before I was vaccinated, it was very stressful. Mm-hmm. And I had my, K95 mask and my face shield and my disinfectant wipes, and didn't take my mask off. I'd stick a metal strap under my mask if I wanted to get a drink, because I didn't want to take my mask off, and I wiped everything down, and it was really stressful. But even after being vaccinated and knowing that more people are vaccinated, and it's my understanding that even under the new CDC guidelines, masks will still be required on planes. So traveling, you're in the airport, you're with a lot of people, you're on the airplane, and even though the airlines have, ramped up their cleaning processes and the air circulation and everything, it's still not like it used to be, but it's getting better with more and more people getting vaccinated.
Well, and it seems like it would be doubly frustrating because you work in a job where getting a vaccine and wearing a mask has become a political question. And there are people who would readily defy those things. And I'm sure they do when cameras aren't on them, or maybe when the cameras are on them.
Oh, yes.
Do you think working in Congress is going to make wearing a mask a longer process than other occupations?
Well, we still have the requirement that we wear them on the House floor, and only take them off briefly at the microphone. And then after we put the mask back on, after we speak, and we clean off the microphone for the next speaker. Honestly, some of the Republicans are not very happy about that. But the speaker said, hey, if you all get vaccinated, we can take our masks off. But so far, that's not happening.
Interesting. In Congress, you're dealing with have staff returned like to the levels they were before?
Some staff. We're not all the staff are in the office. We've been working remotely, especially in Oregon, when the community is there and everything. And so here in Washington, D.C., a few staff members have started coming back in because they have been able to get vaccinated. D.C. did a good job of getting vaccinations available to everyone over 16. And I know in Oregon, more people are getting vaccinated as well. So I'm hopeful that we can get back into the Beaverton office soon. But I've been doing everything I can to keep my staff and the community safe. So we have been working remotely.
Are you looking forward to the day? Because, in Oregon, we're such a small community, politically, and, even compared to other states, I constantly hear from friends who like, oh, well, my member of Congress never has a town hall. My member of Congress, you never see my member of Congress in the neighborhood. Are you looking forward to getting back to being able to get out and do town halls like in person?
Absolutely.
The telephone is nice, but it's not the same thing as getting to see people.
And I don't know when this is going to be online, but I'm actually doing a telephone town hall tomorrow, which is I believe tomorrow's the 15th of Saturday, the May 15th. I'll be doing a telephone town hall. It's not the same. It's not the same as being out in the community. I'm definitely looking forward to going out. I have done some visits. I visited a school as we were preparing to open. I visited schools over the summer with their meal programs because I helped pass the legislation that allowed them to continue serving meals. Food insecurity is such a big issue. And yes, I'm very much looking forward to getting back out into the community as more and more people get vaccinated. It has been a really challenging year for people, and we know COVID has not affected everyone the same. Our BIPOC communities of color have really been disproportionately affected, and so that equity concern is there as well, making sure that we're doing everything we can to make vaccines available and spread the knowledge that they're free and that they're safe. So as more and more people get vaccinated and more people will be out in the community, and that'll be a good thing.
Nice. Coming back to locally here in Washington County, we lost our friend Elizabeth First, the former congresswoman from this district. It was very sad. It seemed rather unexpected. I hadn't heard that she had been sick or anything, so when I heard that she had fallen, I was like, oh, and it was right there. It just popped up one morning in my news feed. What you have any memories of Elizabeth?
I was really sad about that. Well, I'll share a couple, Carl. First of all, the very first political campaign I ever worked on was Elizabeth First when she was running for Congress in the early 90s. And I'd heard about her, and I knew I'd heard about the Republican who was running against her, and I didn't agree with anything that he stood for. And so even there I was with two little kids, and I was out doing lit drops, and when the kids were in preschool, I was making phone calls at her campaign office. And so that was the first campaign that I worked on. Wow. And interestingly, that was when she was running against, as you may remember, Bill Witt. And then I later worked on Charlie Ringo's campaign. No, then I worked on Mitch Greenlick's campaign when Mitch Greenlick ran against Bill Witt. And we lost Mitch Greenlick also last year. And then I worked on Charlie Ringo's campaign when he ran against Bill Witt. But so Elizabeth First was the first candidate I worked for as a campaign volunteer. And then later in life, when I decided to run for Congress, she was just so kind and mentoring and helpful, and came to my town hall meetings and asked questions, and especially her wonderful knowledge of tribal rights and tribal sovereignty and tribal restoration. She was just a wonderful friend to work with, and she hosted an event for me out at the winery, and just a very, very kind, interesting person. So I have more recent memories of working with her as an elected representative, but way back in the early days, I say that she had a pretty big part in getting me involved in politics.
She always struck me as a very independent thinker,
Indeed.
as someone who went against the grain. And I say that, you know what people in Congress are like.
Sure.
And then you come along with somebody like Elizabeth First, who's like, yeah, I'm going to run for Congress, but I don't want this to be my full-time gig. I'm going to be there maybe 2 or 3 terms, and then I'm going to go back to my winery. Like, I want to go back to the farm and, actually, get my hands dirty and stuff. And it's just such an interesting dynamic to hear someone who would talk like that and say, like, yeah, this stuff's important that we're doing, but I can't be the one doing it forever. Like,
Yeah,
that to me was just sort of like so different from what you hear from most
yeah.
members of Congress.
And she did have a very worldly view of things, and her work on peace and global relations. I mean, she, being from South Africa and really growing up during apartheid and marching against it and fighting against it, she had a really wonderful perspective. And over the past few days, few weeks since her passing, I've spoken with some members of Congress who served with her, because it has been a while. So some people have been here for a while, and they do have very fond memories of serving with her and always say really positive things about her. Very principled woman. And when she ran for Washington County Commission, I endorsed her and supported her. And I was sorry she didn't make it. I think she would have been a great voice on the commission.
Yeah, I mean, that was the race where I really started to, get to know her, was in that county commission race.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, when I was working for the Washington County Democrats, whenever she was in downtown Hillsborough, she would pop in and she just want to know what was going on with the party. And I thought that was just delightful that she's, still wants to be involved in our community in some fashion.
Right. Yeah, she'll be missed. It was a tough year, losing Elizabeth, losing Mitch Greenlick. Really tough. It was just a year ago we lost Mitch.
Yeah, it's been, I think, one of those things we haven't quite been able to process yet, because COVID has kept us so confined from each other that I know there's going to be like a backlog of like wakes and memorial services and stuff that people are just going to decide, okay, we need to celebrate this person's life this month.
Right. My mom, I lost my mom last June, and we haven't had her memorial yet because my brothers haven't been able to travel to Oregon because of COVID. So it's been not the best year, but I tell you, after the election, I just had so much more hope and sort of collective sigh of relief across the country. Sometimes people would say, well, what are you going to do if Joe Biden doesn't win? I was like, I don't even want to think about it. I don't think the planet would have survived another 4 years of Donald Trump. And I do want to mention, I don't know how much time we have left, but I do want to mention that the work that I've been doing on the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis is so needed right now. I was honored that Speaker Pelosi asked me to serve on the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. And last Congress, we heard from hundreds, if not thousands, of people from across the country, and from experts, from scientists, from tribes, and just a lot of input into drafting our bold, science-based, comprehensive climate action plan. It's very lengthy, more than 500 pages, but it's broken down into 12 pillars with economic and environmental justice woven throughout, jobs and workforce woven throughout. But it really sets an action plan for us to transition to a clean energy economy. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done and will continue to do. I co-chair the Oceans Caucus, and so I'm looking at and have been leading on a lot of the ocean solutions, and Oregon truly has been a leader. We have the very first wave energy pilot project in the United States off the Oregon coast right now, harnessing the power of the waves, which is really, really exciting to see that potential. I mentioned the ocean acidification bill that I'm working on, very exciting. And we do have Oregonians coming back to the administration. Dr. Jane Lubchenco from Oregon State, she was the administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the Biden administration. She's back in the Office of Science and Technology Policy. And Dr. Rick Spinrad, also from Oregon State, has been nominated as the new NOAA administrator. So yay for Oregon, and sending some great people to work on science and to help us pass this climate action plan, because we know this is not a distant threat. This is our reality, with more extreme weather events, warmer temperatures, more risk of drought, sea level rise, and we must take action. So I'm very excited to work with the Biden administration and the Oregonians in the Biden administration to pass the climate action plan and really make a difference for this generation and beyond.
Wonderful. Well, I think for closing, do you have any thoughts about what's coming up next for Congress? Like, what are the big things left on the plate that Democrats in Congress and the Biden administration still want to see pushed through?
Well, definitely the American Jobs Plan, which is the big infrastructure bill. I have long advocated for a definition of infrastructure that is more than just roads and bridges. Yeah. Infrastructure is what we need for our economy to function. It includes roads and bridges, but it's more than that. It's broadband, it's our grid, it's affordable housing, it's public school buildings. So that broad infrastructure bill with all the jobs that come with it and all the opportunities that I'm working on as a member of the Education and Labor Committee and a member of the Higher Education and Workforce Subcommittee, to make sure that those opportunities are available to those historically left out of those good paying jobs. So that's a really critical piece of legislation that we're working on. And the American Families Plan, which I mentioned, which is the bill that really recognizes the importance of childcare as part of infrastructure. And I think it was Secretary Buttigieg recently said, I don't care what you call it, but if you don't want to call it infrastructure, just recognize the importance to the economy of these pieces. And childcare is one of those. I was working on childcare before the pandemic and recognized that in every county in Oregon, there was a childcare desert, which means there's one spot for every 3 kids who need it. And childcare is too expensive for working families, and the people doing the really important work of taking care of the next generation are often paid poverty wages. So this is not something we can fix. It's not going to fix itself. You can't fix it with some sort of market solution, because you can't raise the tuition so you can pay more, and you can't just pay more because you can't raise the tuition. So we need to invest in childcare, and as it turns out, it's a really good investment that pays for itself. Because when kids get a good start in life, when they have good quality early childhood education and a safe place for them to be when their parents are at work, they get a better start in life. And when we have policies like paid family leave, which of course all other industrialized countries have, that is good for our families. It's a good investment that gets our kids off to a good start in life. Then they do better in school, they join the workforce, and so we're working on these, the American Jobs Plan, the American Families Plan, and I hope we get those over the finish line as well. I do want to mention that in light of this, especially over the last year, this reckoning that we've been having as a country with racial justice issues. The House has passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We need the Senate to act as well, but we need to do more, because we know that historically over the years there have been inequities and opportunities in employment, in Black maternal health, in education. So addressing those issues, as the chair of the Civil Rights and Human Services Subcommittee, I'm focused on those issues as well, and making sure that our communities are safe for everyone.
I know one thing I've been curious about, that I know people my age and your children's age are curious about. Do you think student loan reform is going to happen this session?
I sure hope so, Carl, because too many people are strapped with too much student loan debt. And it's been particularly hard during the pandemic, when so many people have been either laid off or just can't get back into the workforce. So I hope so, but it really involves two parts. It involves addressing the current student loan debt.
Mhm.
And there are many ways to do that, from forgiveness to income-driven repayment to public service loan forgiveness. There's many ways to address it. But we need to address the current student loan debt. And then importantly, we need to address it going forward, and make sure that people can go through college if that's what the path they choose to take. Finances should not be a barrier. They should be able to get out of college without incurring debts. So a debt-free college and university is on my list as well. But we can't solve one piece without solving the other. We need to solve them both, the current debt and the debt going forward. But I also wanted to mention, because this comes up a lot, we need to have a path for everyone. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer in higher education. I worked my way through. First I went to Lane Community College, got an associate degree. Then I went to University of Oregon for 2 years, got a bachelor's degree, and then I went to law school and got a law degree in 7 years. And I did it, I was on my own. So I did it all with grants, loans, work study, but I didn't have a lot of debt because it just wasn't that expensive for a public university at that time. But I would really want to mention that we have to send a message that if someone's not on that path and decides they want to go into the trades or get some other skills and not go to college, that we have to have a path for them. And we need to send a message that you can be successful. So that's why I was proud to support the update of the National Apprenticeship Act that we updated for the first time since the 1930s. Big supporter of workforce training programs and making sure that people can get the skills they need to get a good job, with a recognition that not everyone is going to be a fit for going to college. Some might take a break and then go later. We can't send a message that they're a failure if they don't go to college. They're not. We just need to find another path for them. And so that's where those workforce opportunities and registered apprenticeships come in, and other paths to good paying jobs.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up here, are there any final thoughts you have about where you see us going?
Well, as you know, Oregon's getting another congressional seat. So I know everybody's, especially with those politically involved, like the Washington County Democrats, are watching that. They're going to take the population of the state and divide it by 6 instead of 5. So the district I represent is going to lose about 150,000 people.
Yep. Wow.
You know, the census delayed the numbers. So there's a lot of uncertainty there that we're not going to get, the state is not going to get the numbers. The numbers won't be public probably till mid-August. And typically it's done before the session ends. So just a lot of uncertainty. We know that the districts will change a lot. There's been a lot of growth in the Northwest and also in Central Oregon.
Okay. Well, it looks like our time is up. I'm getting the official text. So
Great. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. There's a lot to talk about, isn't there?
There is, and there's a lot to catch up on. I'm hoping we get a chance to catch up soon.
I hope so too. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.